I don't know who needs to hear this, but I know there are some who do. Do you ever feel like you're not enough? You're underperforming. You're not where you should be. A lot of people feel like that. And no wonder, like we're constantly bombarded with cherry-picked images, versions, like the idealized versions that others present of themselves, often photoshopped, often shot with ideal lighting or otherwise manipulated. In fact, in some cases just straight up AI generated, not even real in the slightest. And aside from superficial appearances, people talk about how great their life is, how much they've achieved, and how confident they are, and blah, blah, blah. Again, this is what they choose to share with the world, what they present of themselves. Sometimes they do have their secret insecurities, in fact, a lot of the time I would argue. And everybody's different. Everybody has their own potential and limitations, and of course, what you will often see is like, no, there are no limitations. You could do anything you set your mind to, break all the limits and blah, 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 which sounds great, like super motivational, like, oh yeah, I can do it. I can do anything I want. That's the dream, at least, or it's the product, because quite often you're being sold something. Quite often you're being sold classes on success, how to be a better you, and how to achieve a certain physique or whatever. Like, oh, you got to buy this supplement, then you're gonna look like that. People who sell you that they can teach you how to be a better ... or how to get mad pussy, or There are, of course, people who legitimately, genuinely care and want to help people and get pleasure from seeing them succeed. Of course, personal coaches and whatnot, but there's also the predatory variety. They just want to sell something. They don't really care if you get the result you want. So part of the marketing scheme is, first you need to feel inferior so that you feel the need for the stuff. Oh, you're trash. You better spend your hard-earned money to fix that, right? And of course, self-improvement is good. Don't get me wrong. It's always good. But the problem comes when you do it in a toxic way, where you compare yourself to, again, the cherry-picked versions of others, and you overreach in an unhealthy way. Like, there is productive overreach, as in progressive overload when training. But you can overreach beyond what you're able to deal with and recover from. As an example, personally, I've always struggled with being fat and unfit. I was the chubby, clumsy kid in school. Struggled with doing things that the other kids could seemingly do pretty easily. And there have been phases where I was able to finally get a grip on it and lose a lot of fat and get fit and go to the gym regularly, etc., etc. Ultimately, I wasn't able to maintain it for longer than a year or two before I started the downward spiral again. But the last time I got to my lowest ever weight, the fittest that I've ever been, there I still wasn't happy. Like, until then, I got motivation from the thought that, hey, if only I manage that, if I get slim, if I get to a certain weight, then I'll finally be happy, I'll finally be satisfied. Unfortunately, I wasn't. What I was at the time was incredibly exhausted all the time because I was overtrained, I was non-stop tired. I accumulated enormous amounts of fatigue that I had no chance of recovering from. And it was stressful, and it wasn't fulfilling, unfortunately. Which is not to say that it's not fulfilling to reach your goal, obviously. You can absolutely be happy when you get there, when you reach a fitness goal and slim down and everything. You can be very happy and all that. But in my case, what happened is that I raised the bar. The more I achieved, the higher I raised it, which in and of itself is good, right? That's what you want to do. But I overdid it in the sense that When I got to that point, I didn't look back the same way and say, hey, I got so far, look at that. I used to be so fat and now I'm slim and everything. No, I was starting to compare myself to athletes. And that's where the trouble started. Then I was like, well, damn, I'm not bench pressing 250 pounds or whatever. This is unacceptable. I need to really push hard and grind and still on a calorie deficit, which is not smart. So then I was breaking down my body and causing permanent injuries that I'm still dealing with, and that caused another downward spiral, the worst yet. So it was self-destructive. If I had only, when I got there, if I had relaxed a little bit, not too much, but just ease up a bit, eat a little more again. In fact, I would have probably been more successful rather than less, because again, overtrained. But instead, I just stubbornly pushed and pushed and pushed, like the grind set, as they say. And it destroyed my body to a large extent. And I'm still in the process of picking up the pieces and trying to put them back together, which is difficult. The tricky thing here is, of course, that it is good to push yourself. Absolutely. If you want results, again, progressive overload. You need to make it harder and harder to progress. So that's good. And so sometimes it can be very difficult to figure out, are you pushing yourself enough or too much? Is it sustainable or not? It's good to push yourself and work on developing yourself, obviously. But sometimes you also need to take a step back and say, hey, am I just wrecking myself? Am I just beating myself up over not really that much return? Which is hard to figure out. It really is. If you're too paranoid about that, then yeah, you may under-challenge yourself, which is not good. But if you overdo it, it can be even worse. And that also applies to everyday life, like taking on responsibilities. Some people are so stressed out and overloaded and basically work themselves into an early grave, because we know that high levels of chronic stress are extremely unhealthy. They have an enormous impact on cardiovascular health and all that. Some people just grind and grind and grind. And then at the end of it all, they look back and think, I wish I hadn't worked so much. I wish I had lived more. That's the most common regret that people on their deathbed have. They don't say, oh, I wish I had worked more. No, they say, I wish I had lived more. I wish I had spent more time with loved ones, etc. I wish I had followed my dreams instead of just being a cog in the machine to grind until it breaks. Especially if you're playing life on hard mode and you're pretending it's normal mode like everyone else. But some people have certain challenges that make everything way, way more difficult to get through. Which, once again, doesn't mean that these people shouldn't challenge themselves, push themselves, but it means something a little different. You know, not overreaching means something different if you're dealing with a mental health issue or a physical problem or a combination thereof or economic challenges or any number of things. There's so many issues that can layer on top of one another to make life a lot more difficult.
What I'm trying to say is that some people have to work harder for the same result. As outside observers, we like to look at the final result and extrapolate how hard they worked based on what we think it takes to get the job done. But if you've put a lot of hard work into something, even if the final result would have been accomplished by someone else more easily perhaps, you can take pride in knowing how hard you worked for it.
Challenges are good and you will grow in the process of overcoming them, but only if you're able to overcome them. If you overburden yourself, you're not really going to make any gains other than burnout and stress and all of that. That's not what you want to level up now, is it? To some people, that is just life. You grind until you die. But where is the life, really? Particularly if you're just grinding to enrich someone else, that's a different story. But overall, if your life is packed with stress and responsibilities and pain and frustration and all that, with little positive to go on, then what are you doing? What's it for? I mean, yeah, you may think, well, eventually I'll retire and then my life will be better. What if it's not? I mean, we're seeing that. We're seeing that with increased costs of living and inflation skyrocketing and everything. It's pretty difficult for retired seniors to make it at this point. Like, some have to go back into the workforce in their 70s, which is nuts, right? So you might chase that carrot your entire life, and then you get there and it's like, oh, it's not there. Or by that time the carrot is all shriveled up and moldy. There's no easy answer to that. There's no quick and simple recipe for, like, this is how you will enjoy your life. Obviously, everybody is different. Once again, everybody has different opportunities. But sometimes you might be happier with less, just downscaling your ambitions and expectations and responsibilities and all that, instead of taking on more and more and more and more that you just can't handle. If you crumble under the weight of it all, then it's too much. Again, challenge, but not excessive overreach. Whatever that means. I don't have easy answers for that. All I know is that personally I'm still dealing with the consequences of having overburdened myself in the past, and it's very difficult to get out of that at this point. Your mileage may vary. If you can handle a lot without falling apart physically and or mentally, great. More power to you. But sometimes it's good to remind yourself that there's more to life than being an obedient worker drone, or, you know, a super successful entrepreneur on the other side who's just constantly on the run and doing this and this and that and that. Probably doing a poor job at a bunch of different things. Like, if you're the CEO of 5 companies, that's probably not a significant contribution to each one of those. Anyway, that's a lot of blabbering. I'm sure people will pick apart individual statements I make and take them out of context and jump to conclusions like, oh, you're just glorifying laziness or whatever, which I'm not, but some people have very strong feelings about this kind of thing because they are so caught up on it. And if they were to admit that all this grind is taking away from the life they could be living, they might get angry because there's a sunk cost fallacy. Right? Like, if they've quote unquote wasted so much of their life doing that grind when they would have been enough without overburdening themselves so much, it feels like a waste, and they may not want to admit to that waste. So they may insist that, no, you have to do it that way. If you don't, you're some kind of inferior goblin. Even though most people understand the concept of quality over quantity. We've seen research showing that people working less actually do a better job and are more productive with that because they are not too fatigued to function effectively. They're not so burned out that they have to cope by finding ways to waste time to not be grinding non-stop because it's just not sustainable. Anyway, thanks for sitting through all this. Let me know what you think. This is something I feel strongly about and wanted to just bring up, get off my chest, even though, of course, I'm not the first one to point this out. Not by any means. So, yeah, discuss. Take care, folks.